So welcome to At This Time, At This Place, and the Arts Lab Festival. My name's John Wilkinson, and I'm the Director of Creative Writing at the University of Chicago. Of course, the University of Chicago is more than ever an abstract entity rather than a place. Physically, it might by now resemble the echoing abandoned cathedral in Gary, Indiana, where Kristen Radke opens her graphic memoir, Imagine Wanting Only This. And the actual place I'm speaking from is an apartment in Chicago's Loop, where I was self-isolated with COVID in the new year, and from whose windows I watched opposite windows being smashed in the summer. These are the epochs of a year that ordinarily would have been timed by the rhythm of going to work and returning, of going on vacation and returning. But the past year feels to me at once eternal and momentary. I know, though, my temporal experience is out of phase with those who felt the sharp point of time as their young children demand time be always occupied, or those caring for the sick and old, those facing the end of their time, and also that my eternity has a different texture from the eternity of unemployment. But in one way or another, everyone will have experienced time and place differently in the past year. When we planned the festival, which this present event inaugurates, we intended mainly to celebrate the astonishing growth of our creative writing program, with its new major rising in a year to second place in the humanities division, with our faculty greatly expanding, and with our full-time lecturers acknowledged by promotion to professors of practice, and to celebrate the wonderful work our faculty have published. We wanted to parade them to the world, but also ask them to invite participation from the contemporaries they most admire, writers whose work in their judgment engages with the most pressing concerns of our day, this place and time, in a state of exception, but so much more threatening and intense for people striving to cross the Mexican-American border, as described in Francisco Cantu's The Line Becomes a River, and in the way past time experience of Black temporality in America. As Douglas Kearney puts it in his poem, Well, I could find myself amounting to get to there on, enfolding political and religious redemption and bringing them to bear on a real place and time, a place and time that yet remain there beyond. So now we are asking, what lies there? And what in the meantime can writing do to bring there closer to here, to join in bringing there about, not through pious wishes and sloganizing, but through helping to reshape how readers, and writers too, since much of our audience consists of young writers, how they feel and think with writing, with art and performance that move truly out of the ordinary, whose beyond gives us the feel, gives us the idea, gives us the possibles of joy of a shared there. Douglas Kearney's new book, Show, finds these possibles in song, but how to make song live on the page. Astonishingly, his title poem answers through lace-making, anchoring verse to repeated rhyme words or bobbins that dance down page after page, prompting improvisation in strict time. Anyone who thinks formal verse is reactionary should check this form out. Invented by one of Douglas's students and named the torchon, defined by my dictionary as a rough peasant style of lace. Kearney loves collaborating. He even writes opera libretti. He wants to wrestle the forms of European high art into shape for here, now, and there. And his writing enjoins a collaborative response. You have to read it out loud, to participate as you read, even if you have an English accent. On first sight, Kristen Radke's Imagine Wanting Only This, a graphic novel of abandoned places, felt to me melancholy and resigned, conjuring a space where I wanted to linger. But I came to understand how its beautifully intricate drawing, the density and particularity, the lovingness of its observation respond fully to its title. If these are such traces as we leave on earth, yes, let us imagine strongly. If we don't know whether we shall leave anything significant, let us stack the odds and leave signs that cause our unimaginable successors to wonder at what we could create. We can fill the empty spaces. This memoir includes a love story fading into an imaginary and archaeological imperative. There will always be new places to dig, which is true even if it's the same place but a new dig revealing new trove. Haven't we had to believe and learn that in the year just past? I can't resist saying that Francisco Cantu's The Line Becomes a River is a book with teeth, since the dreams he records include a nightmare of dentistry. But seriously, this book does have teeth. The question that must agitate any writer on migration is how to give teeth to a story, the like of which a readership, if not immune to human feeling, must already have wept over, been enraged by, felt helpless in the face of, after seeing and reading the reports that flash briefly across the screen, coming to be relegated further and further down in the news stream, except for occasional long-form journalism in heavyweight papers and magazines serving what can be done editorials. Cantu succeeds in the difficult task of embodying a story refracted through the perspectives of family, professional life, the singular experience of an undocumented worker and his family, dream and theory, making it unforgettable, all in pellucid prose. But this challenge is for every writer now, whether the writers we have invited are responding in their singular and exemplary ways to Black Lives Matter, to Me Too, to climate change, to migration, to immigrant experience, to disability, to the pandemic. How to make singular works of art, which for a reader will mean that what had settled as an issue can become piercing anew. An issue sounds like a passive thing, the leeching of a wound. But if an issue can pierce our hearts, what else can we then do with those instruments, both the spears and the hearts? I want to thank those involved in organizing this festival, especially Suzanne Buffum, Vu Tran, and Starsha Gill. At the end of this session, I'll tell you about today's readers' further contributions to the festival, when you'll be able to put questions to them. Their detailed biographies and biographies of all our authors are on our creative writing website. They have notable histories, and you'll want to know about their published books. But it's what each of us goes on to do that matters most. And I can't wait to learn the beginnings of an answer to that from our inaugural readers this evening. Welcome all.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, and just beautiful, and it really creates a resonant space to be in. So thank you so much, John. I also want to thank, particularly on this webinar, Starsha and Jesse. I want to thank Marie for the captioning. And I want to thank the University of Chicago for putting this on and inviting me here to be with so many fine writers. I'm gonna read now for about 15 minutes, and yeah, and we'll see what happens. All right, I'm gonna start with with one of the poems that John mentioned in the introduction. It's called "Well," and so I always feel like if somebody talks about a poem in an introduction, you should do it. Well. I can't reckon, so I shake my head to a woolly of ears and shut-eye continue. But I come to what I must want to be, a well. By I mean to call we. By we mean what's at the bottom of what I want to be. But that's not just so. Well, I could find myself a mountaintop to get to there on. Would I then wrung down myself to that stood water, to what's drowned down in it, by which I mean us, us, us. All right. So a lot of times when I'm writing work and I'm trying different things, I think to myself, how will I introduce this work to the reader, to the audience? And I rack my brain thinking about how to do this. And what comes to me is that there's long time historically been that when Black folks make new art, there's a form that we can use to introduce it to the world, to be received, to introduce to the world, to be for the audience, and that form is the brand new dance. So this poem is a brand new dance that's actually a very old dance, but it's a brand new dance, and it's called "Do the Backseat Jam." Stop there, fam, and jump to the brand spanking. Back again, you know how it goes. Throw your hands in the air when the light's on. Maestro, raise the baton and swing till you feel it. The beat, what's taking over? The street to the club. When I say you, say ow! It thumps. Let me see those hands. All the people in the be quiet. Get down on the floor like you know this will be the short shot hit. Sweat through your clothes. You want it, you got it. You better put your hands. Get ready, you for the you ain't ready 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 for you gonna listen up. Just as easy as falling off a countdown. 3, do it till it's done. To the 2, hit the ones in blue. Show them what you said to do. To the zeros in brown. To the back. To the back. Now you're right in the jam. So that's a brand new dance. That again is a very old dance. It's I'm in St. Paul right now, and the Derek Chauvin trial has begun, and so we're in the throes of that, and wondering what's going to happen this time. This poem is called Buck, and I think it will be clear how that connects. Buck. And I have to get kind of radio DJ sexy here. So, seems some want some bodied into street sweet meat. Come and go get it. We may not fight it, but you'd like us to. Tool, cocked back to make a no way. You kick yourself in us. Umber husked, our dirty look a dirty talk, begging for the something strong in your dom palm, what smokes after doing it. You order us scream to shut up. You ever never hanker for surrender, so the hard, cuff, rough, or stick licks. Such a hurry, look, don't sweat, don't fret. You've ever done this before. Just fudge, we're not real. Too dark here to tell. Let's roll. They were fondling for my piece and finger-banging a cash box peeped through convenient ballistic glass and face-lumped assed out lawn till they popped the juice came out. Then once their cig resisted, lunge shivish fit to shoot shot while the woofers woofed their thick trap beats. You said, and wanted us in buck, so buck us good. We'll buck up after by candlelight, flower petals, and we shall like fucking champs. You're some machine. Ain't you just all up in it? So we got to be down up to here. This next one is called Property Values, and this is related to the idea of what would make black people in particular thank y'all. What would make black people in particular more valuable to a country and a culture who, after looking at the abuse and murder of black people, quickly begins to wring its hands over targets that have been burned down or CVSs. So this is property values. I aspire to be a CVS. Lord, I want to be a drugstore in my heart. Or a nice neighborhood, a rapless gas up in my heart. A legit ballot, I perspire all night at it. That my sweat, alchemical of shit, makes gold factual. Consider spent plantation dirt, arena turf, recording booth. What transmogrifies these sans my properties? If it could, it should, it's been bottled. Me? I transsude this solvent, sun up to you know when, then turn up as you know what. When it come time for one time to calm or gun sunshine through us been crying hues, mustn't the copper figure, were its heart full of mouthwash, hair care products, and miscellaneous cheap electronics, I'd serve, protect. Lord, my escalators would all descend, and all for sale would glisten. All right. I'll do this one here, and just in case we need to get back on schedule, I'll do this one, and if we need to move on, we can. So this is a poem called Show. It is the title poem. Um, and John introduced this one as well and mentioned that it was created in a class by a student of mine when I taught at CalArts named Indigo Weller. And it works similarly to a sestina in that the end words, the bobbins, are what change and shift. All right, and this is a poem about being what people need you to be even when it's not what you want to be. Show. Some need some body or more to ape sweat on some sight. Bloody pearl or dirty spit, hocked up for to show who gets eaten. Rig body up, bow to breeze a lazed jig and sway to Grig's good fiddling. Pine deep dusk, a spot where stood body, thus they clap when I mount bonk, jig up the lectern, bow to say it's all good. We gathered withstood the bends of dives, deeper, darker. They clap as I get down. Sweat highlights my body. How meats dyed bloody look fresher for showing. I got deep spit out my mouth, a rigid red rind, bloody melon. Ha! No sweat. Joking, nobody knows the trouble. Rig full of days, show why fix this mess. Spit in tragedy's good eye. This one's called Jigger Gogglers, then bow housefully. They clap, be misunderstood. Hang notes high or deep, make my tongue a bow. What's the gift? My good song box, the gift. Jig nickels from deep down my craw. They clap, I'm so jolly. Stood on that bank, body picked over, bloody ratto. Braxton sweat, brow syndrome. Spit out a sax belt rig, a negrocious show of feels. For show, sweat equals work, bloody ink pot of body. I stay nib dip, show never run dry, rigorously I spit out stressed feet. Lines jig, ha 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 ha. Good one that I is, bow deep but not out, stood shining dim. They clap, waves slapping holes. Deep don't mean sunken. Goods not yummy, right? Bow blanched with foam, jigs. This one's called They Clap. Barrow, so much deep ends upon dead. Stood I on that bloody rise of sweet body. There you is too. Sweat it lets they clap right. Some ask post spit till lipped. I said show. And yeah, if we need to get back on schedule, I'm cool stopping there.
No, keep going, please.
Okay. All right. So I'll go as was originally planned. Thank you. This next one is called Borax. This mud smirch of a muck. It's them, isn't we? Ain't it responsible for messes of mess? We're who were rigged by what had happened was. Ain't it A, tainting, B, attainted, C, who taints? We make to stay at digging up dung heaps while the undung ones, aren't they? I'm at saying whatever shit crossed their mind. Who's low down and dirty in their clean version? They mean to keep it scrubbed, isn't we? They keep our hands stained as their shine. And I'm going to end with a poem called Fire. And Fire is about spirituality, but it's also about like experiences that I've had in a church choir where I once was, that there's this kind of spiritual feeling that moves through, but it's also like sensual. There's a sensual feeling in that. And this poem is about how certain sensualities are not allowed in church. And so, and in the congregation, period, even when they're at home. And so this poem is kind of grappling with like the sensuality of the Holy Spirit and the oftentimes homophobic, sex negative, misogynistic spaces that churches sometimes are. Fire. God, we cry because nobody do us like the body. Oh, Jesus, love me, this I. No place low enough to keep me high enough for when I feel filled with it. I am not ashamed to kneel, not ashamed to sing when I have that name in my mouth and O turned O and I turned A. I am singing and turned when I what I owe to the blood what flowed. What we owe, alive. That body by that spirit. What's flowing by the spirit isn't ghost, lest we ghost it. I from the row in the body of ore up in it, my body up in my robe, my eye roll up to lift, to wonder from where I get what come. What's ghost isn't spirit. Spirit, what guides sopranos, keen pierce, its licked, sweet glow high enough, radiating sweat before me. What rides high the pierce they make to go inside us is, oh, in this place, death can't shake, pearl rung. What runnels me, what runs soak, alto shoulder rock, nobody do us, oh Lord, oh, that treble throat on its dark ladder, what wrestle, come hither, come higher, come lower, what wind rattle rock, that don't roll, what's oh, to the body of this, the blood, what shed, come quiver, come quaver, climb lower, oh, go down, oh, do I, chimes into tenors, swears, sang now, get happy, they got it in them, get it in me, filled with what, oh, I know it was the blood, bear down over it, a cleft bowed low enough for the tremulous tremor, the things of the spirit in this place, the bases, we come, go down, not ashamed, I, to come, go down, oh, deep black zenith, God, go down, lift up, take in what's licked, sweet body of the body of what's on high. Oh, go down. Oh, 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 that God, good spirit. Flow, pierce, run, swayed, bowed, what we owed the body. I see, we sang a sweet body of the sweet body we give. I know it was what flow in the row, in the body of the things of the spirit. I turn a rock, tremor, turn thing, nobody. I know it was, my mouth full of sweat. What chime with what I know it was supposed to be, but shed like a skin, like a robe. Oh, I went down to the row in the sweet body of I see, I hear, what's said. What said was too ashamed to owe. What flowed from the spirit, I know it wasn't what I see. Some said, like a snake, like a shame, what I owe went down in the row. The word don't do me. What I do now. Thank you.
Douglas, that was such an awesome reading. Man, hard to follow that. And also just like thanks to everybody who's still in the call for being so persistent. I feel like the technical difficulties is such a, like, you know, when there's just that little sliver that's keeping you on Zoom and it falls away, a lot of times it's the perfect excuse to abandon Zoom. So thanks to everybody who's still here. And also thanks to everybody who organized this, and John, thanks for that beautiful introduction, really humbling introduction. I'm so honored to be reading with you all and to be on the panel tomorrow. This is such a great lineup. I'm gonna read. I'm actually not gonna read from my book. I got really excited when I saw the name of this reading, because I've been thinking and writing a lot about place and landscape lately. And I did a series of essays for VQR last year that were sort of based around the idea of pilgrimages to sites that had sort of been mythologized through the work of different artists. And so I'm going to read today from an essay that actually I thought, fittingly begins in Chicago in a way, which you'll see. And the essay is about Selena. I'm a huge Selena fan, and I'm not talking about Selena Gomez. I'm talking about the queen of Tejano. So I'm going to get into character here, put my Selena hat on that I bought on this trip. So the essay is called Sounds of Nepantla, and I'm going to read from the first and the third section of the essay. As last summer drew to an end, I signed up to attend my first ever online dance party, the Bitty Bitty Boom Boom virtual Selena tribute, hosted by Chicago's National Museum of Mexican Art. Outside of our Tucson home, which I had rarely left since spring, wildflowers smoldered at the edge of the city, record heat rippled across the desert, and a pandemic tightened its grip over our day-to-day lives. Evening light still filled the sky as I logged onto my computer and launched Zoom, muting my microphone, disabling my camera, and plugging in headphones so as not to bother my partner and dog. The hosts welcomed those of us who had tuned in, and then, after establishing ground rules of mutual respect, described the event's roots as an annual in-person celebration they were hoping to preserve online. The live shows at the Chicago Museum were defined by gleeful performances from showgirls and drag queens channeling the spirit of the world's most famous Mexican-American diva. In an attempt to replicate this same energy, the museum had pre-recorded videos of dancers lip-syncing on an empty stage and would be streaming them to an exuberant audience of homebound Selena fans. The first video, dubbed Ladies of the Night, began with a shot of a black curtain and the opening notes of Disco Medley crescendoing in the background. 4 performers dressed in the sequined cross-cut pantsuit Selena wore for her famed 1995 performance at the Houston Astrodome. They were wearing that, each outfit hugging their bodies in a slightly different shade of purple and pink. Selena's voice belted out a greeting to the sound of a roaring crowd. One of the performers took center stage, clutched her chest, and mouthed, "At first I was afraid, I was petrified," as the others danced behind her. When the song transitioned from "I Will Survive" to Funky Town, the lead singers traded places with the backup dancer, who spun towards the center stage and feigned the new verse. Talk about, talk about, talk about moving. The grid of onlooking faces brimmed with delight. The event continued with performances of Selena's greatest hits, como La Flor, Fotos y Recuerdos, El Chico del Apartamento 512, No Debes Jugar, La Carcacha, I Could Fall in Love, No Me Queda Más, Si Una Vez, Amor Prohibido, La Llamada, and finally, Bidi Bidi Bom Bom itself. Each new song saw performers dressed in different iconic outfits. Selena's white bustier, her denim jacket and halter top, her leather jacket and white lace shirt, her rhinestone-studded military hat. Scrolling through the feed of 80 or so participants, I watched as people sang along with outstretched arms and muted microphones. A woman spinning and twirling her daughters, a girl sitting at a dining room table as her mother danced in a nightgown behind her, a couple bobbing their disaffected cats along with the beat, another woman jiggling a small dog in front of the camera. People watched from their living rooms and kitchens, sang along from bedrooms and backyards, and huddled around grills and tables, drinking from cans of beer and bottles of tequila, many of them proudly displaying Selena-inspired shirts, hats, mugs, buttons, posters, bags, and other paraphernalia. At one point, the hosts asked the audience to call out their locations in the chat thread. We have people from San Francisco and Los Angeles, they announced, from Arizona and Mexico, from Bolivia, Michigan, Chicago, and Austin. The party continued with a raffle, a virtual marketplace, a DJ set. A gust of warm wind brought the smell of rain through my windows. And with sudden energy, I plugged my computer into the living room speakers, filled the house with music, and finally worked up the courage to turn on my camera and dance along with the crowd. The video feed continued cycling through faces and spaces that had become, after nearly 2 hours, almost familiar. And when the hosts announced the last songs, a flurry of final messages and shout-outs rolled through the chat thread, with guests showering attention on one another's moves, clothes, accessories, pets, and home decor. There was, in short, a kind of love in this virtual space, a joy and affection I had not tapped into for nearly half a year, the kind of feeling that often hovers in bars, concerts, clubs, and dance floors. The session ended with a montage of archival footage. Selena laughing among friends and family, singing a cappella and charming interviewers at radio stations and television studios in both English and Spanish. When the time came to sign off, people unmuted their mics to say goodbye. And as farewells dragged on, everyone finally agreed to hang up after a countdown, like lovers afraid to part. So I'm going to skip ahead in this essay. I'm sort of skipping a section that kind of gives a lot of background about Selena's career. So for anybody who's seen the movie with Jennifer Lopez from the 90s or the new Netflix series, it's kind of just like a review to make sure that everybody's on the same page. But I'm just going to assume that that y'all know what you need to know about Selena. And I'm going to pick up with my own now physical journey to visit some of these places where Selena grew up. I began my journey to understand the places that figured in Selena's life and death at the Houston Astrodome, site of her last major concert in 1995. I arrived late at night and fell asleep in the parking lot of a nearby Holiday Inn, watching YouTube videos of the famed performance on a capping mattress in the back of my car. The next morning, I stood outside the closed gates of the stadium, studying the concrete dome and side panels streaked from rainfall like the walls of a canyon. The building, now in disrepair and subject to constant rumors of demolition, was once celebrated as the first air-conditioned arena and was long considered by Texans to be the eighth wonder of the world. When Selena took the stage here on February 26th, the stands were nearly filled with 70,000 screaming fans, shattering all previous attendance records. Now, the only sound was that of cicadas roaring from the treetops, the last remnant of an energy deposited long ago by throngs held in rapture. Driving south towards Lake Jackson, the industrial outskirts of Houston gave way to the green and humid lowlands of the Texas coast. The town of Selena's birth had been named for plantation owner Abner Jackson, who was once the second largest slaveholder in the state. His sugarcane plantations managed to continue operating long after the Civil War, leasing the bodies of innumerable state convicts through a clause in the newly ratified 13th Amendment that permitted involuntary servitude as a punishment for crime. In 1874, an inspection of working conditions at his Lake Jackson plantation found that prison laborers were malnourished, lacked medical care, slept on bare mattresses, and had been beaten and punished at the stocks like the slaves before them. The city of Lake Jackson, as it is known today, was established as a company town for Dow Chemical, the same corporation that pioneered the mass production of Agent Orange and plutonium pits used in nuclear weapons. Indeed, still looming over Highway 288 is the massive Dow Texas Innovation Center, a 55-acre campus dedicated to the company's research and development. Oh, and I'd mentioned this in the previous section, but that's where Selena's father worked before her music career took off, at the Dow Innovation Center. On the other side of the roadway, tucked away along a nondescript row of businesses, I found the dentist's office that had once been Papagayo's restaurant, run by the Quintanilla family. An online fan guide listed the nearby address of the singer's first childhood home, but when I arrived there, I found that the house and the streets around it had been consumed by the expanded parking lot of an H-E-B, a popular Texas supermarket chain. I drove past rows of cars to where Selena's street had once been, recalling old images of her home with its wood-paneled exterior and front yard dominated by a massive live oak. The parking lot, I soon realized, was studded with the few remaining trees that had once shaded the old neighborhood, some draped in Spanish moss, their rustling leaves audible even above the sounds of car tires and shopping cart wheels grinding on the asphalt. The road to Corpus Christi meandered southwest from Lake Jackson over the Brazos, the Colorado, the Lavaca, and the Guadalupe rivers, skirting the inland edge of bays, ports, and deltas. At the outskirts of one town after another, maskless hitchhikers languished in the heat. Barefaced police officers interrogated terrified-looking speeders outside their cars, and historical markers commemorated cattle barons, Spanish missionaries, military men, and a slew of white landowners and empresarios. Meanwhile, the cotton fields and towering rolls of alfalfa zipped past endlessly, marked with menacing signs celebrating God, guns, and country, and imploring, "Keep America great." My arrival in Corpus Christi was preceded by a crush of power plants, refineries, and loading docks. After crossing the Nueces Bay, I finally exited the highway on Shoreline Boulevard and parked along the bayfront next to a white mirador, a Spanish-style gazebo with arched columns and curved roof tiles. Looking up and down the promenade, I noticed several identical structures. Each of the miradors, I would learn, quote, commemorates the city's history and celebrates its firsts, including the first cattle king, the first explorer, the first missionary, the first colonist, and the first U.S. flag, brought to Corpus Christi by General Zachary Taylor, a man who, before ascending to the presidency, led an army regiment in the Mexican-American War that torched villages and orchards, desecrated churches and cemeteries, and became notorious for murdering, raping, and scalping any Mexicans they encountered along the way, including children. In 1997, 2 years after Selena's murder, Corpus Christi erected a new mirador commemorating the pop star. The memorial, according to poet and scholar Deborah Paredes, reinserts Tejanos, the very people conspicuously absent from the key episodes depicted in the other miradors, into the official history that punctuates this well-traveled tourist path. Precisely for this reason, it was met with fierce consternation and debate from local governing officials, power brokers, and Anglo residents. But Selena's unbridled fame and the tourist dollars that flowed from it soon solidified the memorial's place on the seawall. All along Shoreline Boulevard, families strolled by in their masks while teenagers cruised the promenade on electric scooters. Up ahead, Como la Flor blared from outdoor speakers. Adjacent to the Mirador's archways was a wall of yellow and blue tiles depicting a mosaic of flowers, musical notes, and treble clefs, all of them hand-painted, a sign noted, by Texas children who loved Selena. Selena's bronze statue presented her in tight pants, a leather jacket, and her signature bustier, leaning against the Mirador's central white pillar as if in a moment of rest, a microphone held down at her side and her head turned to watch the full moon rising over the silvery waters of the Gulf of Mexico. Selena was not only iconic for an entire culture, a pre-recorded voice announced over the music. She was also able to overcome racial stereotypes. The message played on as I looked down at the bricks beneath my feet, covered with messages of adoration scrawled in black Sharpie and colored markers. I love you, Selena. You are so special. You will always be with my girls. Dreaming of you. From Ohio with love. Stacy and Justin. Brooke y Carlos. Pedro y Juana. She was an entrepreneur and a pioneer, the voice continued from the speakers. She was a trendsetter and a visionary. I stood as close as I could to the sculpture, blocked by a guardrail that had been installed by the city to keep fans' handwritten messages from sullying the monument's whitewashed column. Selena forever lives in our hearts, intoned the voice from above. She forever lives in our memory, and she is forever part of our lives. Beside me, a man who had been gazing up at the statue stepped onto his electric scooter. Tilting his head to the sky, he sang out, "Ay, ay, ay, como me duele." and then zipped off along the promenade. Thank you.
Thanks everybody for hanging with us. I also want to say I run a weekly event for my job, and I know how horrible it is when things go wrong. So thanks everybody, for the organizers, for fixing it and making everything work. It is extremely intimidating to follow two writers I admire so much. I'm going to read from my new book, which is out in July. It's called CQ, A Journey Through American Loneliness. And this is for Vu Tran, who told me to read the most sentimental parts. So I also will need screen sharing enabled, please. In amateur radio, operators call out across frequencies with a series of punctuated monotone beeps known as a CQ call. When pronounced in French, the official language for international telecommunications, CQ sounds like the first two syllables of sécurité, used to mean pay attention. Over time, English speakers took it to stand for seek you. A CQ call is a reaching outward, an attempt to make a connection across a wavelength with someone you've never met. It means essentially, is there anyone out there, and invites anyone listening to answer. In Morse code, it looks like this. If the caller is lucky, another user will hear and latch on, reporting their handle and location. These calls are broadcast across low frequencies, which bend with ease across the curvature of the Earth, allowing for contact across thousands of miles. Callers may speak into a handheld receiver, but Morse code takes less power and cuts through noisier stations, pushing audible messages atop the static. It's customary to send written confirmation of this interaction using a QSL card, typically about the size of a postcard. This is an exchange merely of record, not an invitation to continue the conversation. The postcards function like participation trophies. They're evidence that contact between yourself and another person has taken place. Evidence in a way that you exist. Others have verified it. One night years ago, when I was in my early 20s, I was up late visiting my uncle. With the bottle of bourbon I brought him on the table between us, he began telling me about my father. He was obsessed with ham radio, my uncle said. I'd never heard of ham radio, but apparently my dad stayed up every night making CQ calls. He'd crawl onto the roof to fix the antenna he'd salvaged from a nearby dump, scavenging for another after a winter storm snapped the aluminum at its brittle center. His first receiver, a secondhand model from the 50s, built with metal vacuum tubes in a pre-transistor era, weighed 100 pounds. I just have to close out of this for a second because the windows are blocking my ability to read the text. Okay. Thanks for being with me. Okay. I grew up in a family. Sorry, it's still blocking me. Okay, whatever that first line is, I don't know. I grew up in an economically decrepit part of rural Wisconsin. Their father drank, their parents divorced, and they spoke of their late mother with reverence to her sainthood, the way that many men talk about their dead mothers. During my own childhood, my dad had the demeanor of fathers I'd read about in historical novels I hoarded in my room, stoic, religious, extraordinarily strict. I was terrified to leave food on my plate or hear his footsteps on the carpeted hallway outside my bedroom door, fearing he might open it and see the mess inside. There was no bigger crime to him than waste or not respecting the things we had. My uncle's story was the first time I had access to my dad's need for anything other than order. I'd seen no evidence of desire beyond it. I'd never thought that he'd have looked for, of all things, connection. What does a CQ call sound like? My uncle poured another glass of bourbon and held his hand in the air, replicating the beeps exactly, his finger pulsing to accentuate each one. How can you remember that? I heard it constantly, every night, over and over. In order to operate ham radio, you needed to get a license, my uncle said, and pass a Morse code test. Then you were assigned a handle. What was my dad's handle? WD9JHQ. My father started his own family a few towns over from where he was raised, a still rural, slowly developing subdivision, where I was filled with the basic sense of unbelonging that many children are prone to feeling. Beyond geographic remoteness and the impassable expanse between myself and what seemed like everyone else, I was raised with the tenets of Midwestern politeness. Be quiet, don't touch. When I was grown, I moved to New York, where I was met with my childhood's opposite, the inescapability of other people. Living in a city can become a practice in containing the hostility we feel for the strangers we live alongside. Annoyance when a man's leg is pressed up against ours in a packed subway car, tempering our rage-filled glances at someone vocal frying to their friend or playing tinny music from their cell phone. The days are loud and long, and in some exhausted evenings, the simple existence of others feels like an inconvenience. Strangers invade the monasteries of our minds. Congestion puts those we don't know and will likely never speak to on brief and shifting stages, like department store windows about to be redressed at the end of a season. A girl slumped to her side on the subway, asleep on her way back from school. A man's face illuminated by his laptop's glow through a ground floor window as he sits alone in his apartment. A woman leaning into a post as she holds her cell phone tightly to her ear in an empty parking lot. I didn't expect the ease with which I'd come to project loneliness onto these moments, apply an Edward Hopper glaze over the crystalline banality of a stranger's routine. When I walk down a street at night and catch the corner of a bedroom beyond a window's curtain, or see a woman fumbling for her keys on her apartment's front stoop, I'm surprised by the longing I feel for the people I pass and the homes I'll never be invited into, or perhaps more accurately, for the lives I'll never live. How quickly, then, my annoyance at the proximity of other people turns into tenderness. The grating of a subway car coming down the tracks, its sharp staccato screeching, becomes not the sound of aging infrastructure, but a chorus of solitary voices, like searching CQ calls. The more I've watched companionless strangers, the more I've come to think that these moments are only lonely for those who are observing them. Perhaps we see loneliness in others simply to feel less lonely ourselves. When I was about the same age as my father was when he spent his nights making CQ calls on ham radio, I courted my radio too. Each Sunday night, I lay in bed and listened to Casey Kasem's Top 40 Countdown, his smooth elder voice like a clockwork comfort. He signed off each program by saying, "Keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars." It felt like the most beautiful, most true platitude I had ever heard. I didn't listen for the popular songs, although I often liked them and heard myself in all the angst sung about the kinds of love I was many years away from feeling, but thought I already understood. I listened for the reader-submitted letters that Casey read throughout the show, long-distance dedications in which a person wrote about someone far away and asked Casey to play them a song. The narratives of the letters were sometimes ordinary, like when someone's husband was transferred across the country for work or deployed overseas, and they were making it work apart for a while. The song and the letter was a testament to the reunion they would someday have and the unbroken bond they'd maintain until then. But more often, the songs were pleas for repair, with an estranged parent or a former lover or a friend who'd wronged and wanted things right again. The subtext of all these letters, no matter what hope the writer reached out with, was that resolution wasn't coming. The song was simply a song to that loss, a performance of grief and regret to someone who would not or could not be listening. I felt comforted by their stories. I'd experienced so little, and their letters were an outlet for the misplaced pain I didn't have an excuse for. A woman's best friend had died, so now she went to the movies alone each week, no longer saving the seat next to her. A father regretted leaving his son when he conceived him much too young. A sister wrote to say, "I wish I could find my brother." An ineffectual way to express longing is through a gesture that must have rarely yielded results, but maybe the act of telling was the catharsis many were writing toward. These were personal letters, mailed to a stranger who read them to millions of people, and that seemed to me very brave. The intensity of my loneliness at 33 is unmatched to what it was when I was lying in bed with the radio at 9 or 11 or 15, though now it is much deeper and I understand its cost. I know that some of us are willing to do anything we can to keep ourselves from feeling alone or to remain tethered within the everyday. I know too how so many of us fail, build ourselves little worlds of isolation from which we're unable to break free. I want us to use loneliness, yours and mine, to find our way back to each other. I want us to play songs for each other on the radio. And when we call out across an airwave or a telephone or a chat room or an app or a city street or an open field or a bedroom, I want us each to hear miraculously a voice calling back. Thanks.
What a wonderful note that is to end on. I hadn't anticipated that this first session would center so much on sound and music of different kinds, starting with Douglas producing so much energy in a small room that I thought it would split its walls, and Francisco sitting in front of the desert with the desert wind blowing across the microphone and bird song audible, and taking us on a journey. And now you're talking about the days of amateur radio. And I'm immediately reminded how truck drivers depended in their loneliness on amateur radio, and how central it was to any sense of continuing connection as they went across these vast open spaces. Thank you all so much. That was just a fantastic opening to our festival. And please forgive me if I now work through some advertising for the events that follow. And I'd like to tell you about, first of all, further opportunities to hear our speakers this evening, and when you'll also be able to ask them questions about their work. Tomorrow, Thursday, to midday Central Time, Francisco will be joining Valeria Luiselli, Kathy Park Hong, and Mitchell S. Jackson for a discussion titled First Person, Plural, Autobiographical Writing and Collective Life. I'm just thinking, of course, that Valeria's novel is also about sound recordists. So I can feel a connection beginning to be made across this festival. On Saturday at midday Central Time, Douglas and Kristen will be joining Valeria Luiselli, Will Boast, Ilya Kaminsky, and Jennifer Scapitoni for a discussion titled Talking Sense, Image, Sound, and Text in Literature. You can tell we're a serious program. We have colons in all of our titles. There'll be a reading by Kathy Park Hong, followed by a conversation with Sian Nai at 6 o'clock Central Time tomorrow, Thursday, as part of the Deadman Writer in Residence series. After today's event, I hardly need to dwell on the irony of writer in residence, or indeed the irony of talking about dwelling. Friday brings Ilya Kaminsky, Kathy Park Hong, Julie Iramuanya, Stephanie Swallow, and Lila Ferreira Cabeza-Venegas together for a craft talk on long-form writing at midday Central Time. There'll be a poetry reading by Ilya Kaminsky in our annual Pearl Anderson Sherry Poetry Series at 6 o'clock Central Time. And if you're still with me, finally on Saturday at 6 o'clock Central Time, Valeria Luiselli will give a reading and be joined in conversation by Rachel Cohen and Cesar Kestenbaum, writer in residence. That's a lot of information to take in. You can find the details on our website, creativewriting.uchicago.edu, and register at crwr.eventbrite.com. I hope to see many of you at these further events, and that this whole festival will feel in some way vernal, that you'll feel the world is being opened up again by the writers who are joining us. So now let's just have a final burst of appreciation and thanks for all of our wonderful readers. you so much.